The February 18th meeting of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission to order. Ms. Jerez, can we do a roll call?
Yes. Chair Jackson.
Present.
Commissioner Santa Croce.
Here.
Commissioner Alkalele. Commissioner Wanton.
Here.
Commissioner Vice Chair Tadora Hargraves.
Here.
Commissioner Evans. Commissioner Altman.
Present.
Commissioner Caldwell.
Present.
Commissioner Birch.
Present.
Commissioner Amari. Commissioner Billups.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we approve the agenda, is there a motion to amend it?
Yes, I would like to amend the agenda to add a statement from the chair, and the public comment, we're going to be changing to a community forum. We understand we have a lot of people here, and it may be a better system of having you be able to converse with us as a community forum as opposed to just making a statement and us not being able to respond.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion? Would you all like to discuss this? Should we call a vote? All in favor of the amending the agenda as proposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
You can come in. I afraid we're out of chairs, though. Oh.
I have to find some more.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Anan Amiri was not able to join us. She is currently in Spain, but she wanted to have this read into the record. She sent a letter today. Dear Chairwoman Jackson and fellow commissioners, I have been in Spain for the past month. However, despite the distance, I have heard that Police Chief Cox has been placed on administrative leave and that no public explanation has been given about the city's drastic action, not even to the City Council or to the Police Oversight Commissioners. This action, and especially the secrecy surrounding it, reflects badly on the City of Ann Arbor. It will have a serious negative effect on the morale of the police department and, of course, the newly founded ICPOC. Additionally, this secretive action actually interferes with the police oversight work of furthering trust and good relationship between the City of Ann Arbor, its police department, and the city's minorities and communities of color. Chief Cox has not been in his position but for a short period, and one cannot begin to imagine what he could have done to deserve such drastic action. No matter what the ultimate outcome, this action will make it extremely difficult for Chief Cox or any successor to feel secure in executing their duties and implementing changes that would assist in the goal of the Police Oversight Commission and the city. The silence of our mayor and the city administrator leaves too much room for idle speculation. The longer the silence, the more speculation and rumors will be generated. I would like to voice my opinion, and I do hope that all the members of the commission are united in their demand for a speedy, open, explanation and resolution of this matter. Respectfully, Anan Amiri. So, I wanted to make a brief statement before starting our meeting as well. We expect that many of you are here because Chief Michael Cox was unexpectedly placed on administrative leave. I want to reiterate that all of the commissioners here are invested in this community. Each of us has a demonstrated commitment to enhance accountability and transparency in policing and to build community trust through civilian oversight. We were appointed to be responsible to the community. We were primarily formed because of the officer-involved shooting of Oral Rosser in 2015 and the subsequent work of activists and the task force convened from the Human Rights Commission. One of the principal reasons we were appointed is because of the city's stated desire to enhance transparency and to have us facilitate a mutually beneficial relationship between the police and those who work and live in the city. And it is the transparency that is the heart of all of our work. Chief Cox went through a rigorous interview process that included community members, members of this commission, and city council members. He was by far the most experienced candidate, having led a force several times that of Ann Arbor. His prior experience included professional development and training of officers, operations, and internal affairs. We have been informed that he has not had a complaint filed against him during his 30 years in Boston, and he was, after his interview process, unanimously confirmed by the Ann Arbor City Council on July 1st. Although it is clear that the city lacks a professional human resources administrator at this time, we want to be clear that we know it is not our job to evaluate HR issues. However, we were convened to provide oversight of police policy and procedure, and it's challenging to do so in an environment that is this secretive. We understand the need for a confidential evaluation, but we are very concerned about the way the process has been handled. For example, due to the lack of clarification, the public has been left to speculate about what has happened. One newspaper heading read, "After 7 months on the job, the chief has done something so serious that he's been placed on administrative leave for at least 2 weeks." The city administrator had the opportunity to narrow the area of the investigation, and he has not chosen to do so. We have received calls from all over the country. We have, however, been able to discern a couple of things. For example, that the chief is not being investigated for sexual misconduct. We understand that was a great concern. It ranked really high on the questions that we got. We also want to make abundantly clear that this administrative action was not a result of any issue with this commission. We have struggled to get information on cases, but that backlog was not due to the chief. We have recently been able to make good progress working with Lieutenant Bonnie Tile in professional services, in professional standards. The city administrator has decided not to handle the investigation, but rather to hire an outside investigator, and we did not know how long that investigation would take. I will update that statement in a moment. We do hope that the investigation or the results of it will be made public at some point. We know you vote, so our strong suggestion is that you contact your city council member to encourage them to keep the public informed and to make the process as transparent as possible. To facilitate that, we have contact information for all city council members. Last, we have explicitly amended our agenda tonight to accommodate more public comment to make sure that your questions are addressed. Before proceeding with public comment, we do have an update. Jane Lum was kind enough to share to us that the city attorney has indicated that he expects the investigation into Michael Cox will be concluded by Thursday. City council expects to convene an emergency, do you call it emergency, or a special meeting on Thursday or Friday to address the matter. Anything you want to add to that?
No, we were provided this update earlier today from the city attorney, said I could share this, and that the investigation will be concluding either sometime tomorrow, late tomorrow, or Thursday. And we've not yet been privy to the investigation, how it's proceeding, and obviously the report again will not be shared until sometime tomorrow or early Thursday. And it was recommended by the city attorney that we meet in special session to call a special meeting to hear the results from the outside independent consultant that was hired administratively. Council did not direct the city to undertake this investigation. It was done administratively, and it looks like, just based on the RSVPs to when folks will be available, that this special meeting will occur. It hasn't been confirmed, but it looks like it will be scheduled for this Friday, late afternoon, like maybe 4 o'clock, but that's yet to be determined.
Thank you.
That's all I know.
Thank you for the update. So in keeping with our community forum, we'd like to take questions from you. A speaker can ask one question at a time, and then get back in the line that we don't have. Please let us know in what ward you vote if you happen to know that information. We can allot 5 minutes for each person's discussion. We ask that there are no personal attacks or allegations. Mr. Dwight Wilson has indicated earlier that he would like to lead off our public comment. So please do. You can come to the mic if you like. People might be able to hear you better, or...
Yeah, I'll do that. You don't offhand know which city attorney it is. They have a half
This would be our chief counsel, Mr. Postma.
Okay.
Where do you want me to be?
Right here. For about 4 years, I served as the chair of the Human Rights Subcommittee that was looking into police oversight. And then I was on the task force that helped get the ordinance passed. I am speaking for Dwight Wilson alone, not any organization or my family. In the midst of Black History Month, perhaps as stunning irony, if not mean-spirited deliberateness, the new African-American police chief of Ann Arbor has been announced to be under investigation and suspended from office. Obviously, his authority over the department has been undercut and professional reputation harmed throughout the community. I only ask, when he is exonerated, will his accuser be publicly placed under investigation and he be given a public apology from each of his superiors? If there is so little trust among the power brokers, it's unreasonable to expect the rest of us to believe in your dedication to justice. I got permission from my wife to be here because this is our night out. And I have responsibilities to this community. So you will forgive me for leaving, and I thank you for this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Come on up.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Come on up.
Just the mic will catch you and then it'll be on the recording.
So you had mentioned that there was, investigation was done by an outside firm. Could you tell me a little bit more about that process and how that all works? If it's not done through city council, or what kind of authority the administrator has to do that?
You don't normally respond to, but should I
I think we can
do my
use
best?
community
Okay.
forum. So we did that, so we wouldn't
I
be
can tell
not
her
breaking
what
the
law firm
rules.
does.
I just don't know how the
Yeah.
process works, so
Right.
I'm wondering
So this
how.
is outside.
Yes.
So we did ask Howard Lazarus, Chair Jackson and I that, and the way he explained it to us is that this outside agency, which we know now is a law firm,
Miller
Yes.
Canfield.
Miller
Canfield.
Canfield,
Okay.
has been hired, and they will come in and do this type of review or investigation. And then the report would be given to the administrator, the city administrator, and then he would review it and decide how to go from there on. But as Councilmember Lum informed us, they are going to receive it, the council will. When we spoke to City Administrator Lazarus, he did not inform us of that. So this is a new update that council is going to receive the report also.
May I ask another question? Is that a normal way that things happen, or does this seem to be out of the norm
As
for?
far as
I
I
don't know
know,
how much
this is
precedent there is for
unprecedented.
it.
This just has not been done before.
It's really unprecedented.
Yeah.
Does this seem like a unilateral decision that this was made, or like, again, just
The city
asking
administrator had the
questions?
He
latitude
has
to,
the, right.
to,
Okay.
So
to decide who would conduct the investigation,
Okay.
to direct the scope of the investigation, and we were certainly not informed as to that. We weren't informed, city council was
Also
not, informed at all.
So I don't know what the history in the city is, or the history, the frequency among cities deciding that an investigation is best held because externally, because it avoids any
Sure,
appearance
I
of
get that part,
impropriety.
yeah.
But I've been in the law firms that have done these kind of investigations. This is all, I don't know anything about the facts or anything what happened, but what's happening is standard.
Okay.
Like nothing feels different to me.
Okay.
There's automatically there's a press lockdown. You don't talk to anyone, and that's why I think why we're not hearing anybody, because you're trying to protect the rights of the accused and the accuser,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
The law firm comes in and they work it like a case. They interview witnesses, they look at documents, they come to some sort of facts, they have a finding of facts. Here's what we learned, here's what the law is, and usually in most instances, they ask for a legal opinion. Now here, because we have a built-in city attorney's office, maybe that didn't happen. But as frustrating as the cone of silence is, it's SOP, right? It's just it's what happens, and I hate it, but it's there for a reason.
And I would just add that, thank you, David, for providing your professional expertise, working on the other side of these kinds of investigations. I said it's unprecedented, but this year we did have another outside independent investigation conducted of another staff member.
Okay.
But in that instance, it was a little different because council did make that request.
Right.
And to pursue that investigation, and that report was presented to us. And I won't get into the,
It's fine. Okay. All right. Those are the questions that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so Howard Lazarus provided no explanation for why he needed to hire outside investigation rather than handle the investigation internally?
I think it was more of what Commissioner Santacroce said, was to have an outside voice come in as opposed to having it done internally by his peers.
Okay.
We also don't have a ranking human resources director at this time who might ordinarily
Right.
handle HR situations. That person doesn't exist, hasn't been replaced, and that may be a factor as well.
Okay.
Were you asking though, was there like a reason for
Yeah,
it?
so like, did he say like, hey, I can't handle this investigation because of a particular reason? A conflict of interest, or?
that wasn't stated, but I do think that it was determined perhaps by, I'm sort of, reading tea leaves a bit, but that it would be in everyone's best interest to ensure that this was done independently.
It often becomes apparent, and sometimes it's just stated at the top of the report. This matter was turned over to Miller Canfield, turned over to us because of apparent conflicts and blah, 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 blah. Here's what we did, here's what we found. So it usually comes out in the wash. Sometimes you can't disclose it up front because then you're disclosing, in order to disclose it, you're disclosing things about what the alleged conduct was and whatever. I was surprised, although happy to see them at least caged. They removed sexual misconduct. That
was because we directly forced that issue. We
that
directly
is,
asked
it's
him, yes,
rare
no.
to get any comment. So the fact that they narrowed the field, to me, is interesting.
And I think that came about too because there were so many inquiring minds, understandably, because unfortunately, something this dramatic, people tend, think sort of worst case scenario to
Right.
elevate it to a recommended administrative leave, if you will. But so the error fortune was clear on that. There were other, everyone is questioning, why this action was taken. We all want to have a better understanding of this, and so everything from sexual harassment to, various other causes have we've been asked about this. So it's hard not to be able to answer these questions the way we would all like, and hopefully, we'll be able to relatively soon.
Do you want to add anything, Jude? Can you come up to the mic just so we can hear you? Sam Dodge has a big booming voice, so he didn't move, but,
I do too, but I'll move anyway.
okay, I'm sorry, you could have yelled then.
It's okay. Is this the mic?
It
Yes.
is, but you're fine where you are,
Okay.
you don't have to.
Well, my name's Charmin Spicer. I don't live in the city of Ann Arbor any longer, but Jane remembers when I did live in Ann Arbor and I was involved in questioning how the search was conducted for the police chief. I don't know how long ago, maybe 2015. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that history, they selected an African American man from Detroit, and he accepted, and then he withdrew. And we never heard why he withdrew. So since then, we've had the task force, which worked really, really hard to come up with an effective oversight police commission, and heard a lot from the community about the racism and the trauma that's been caused by racism in our community. When they put forth their proposal to City Council, there was a lot of pushback. They didn't want it to be as effective as it was designed to be. That was my read on it, and I think a lot of other people's read. Well, much to their surprise, they got an effective police oversight commission. Bravo.
Thank you.
For you folks, thank you for being here, because if you weren't here now, there'd be no place for us to come and be heard. City Council, but that never feels like, it doesn't feel to me like I've been heard. My question is, the police chief moved his family to Ann Arbor. He's been traumatized. If this law firm rules or decides there were no grounds for this leave, which is what I expect will happen, how does the city of Ann Arbor compensate him for what this has done to his life? Because why did he ever move here to go through this? And what example does it set for anybody else who's willing to put their professional career on the line? So what if they said it wasn't sexual harassment? So I want to know how the city of Ann Arbor is going to be held accountable for what's happened if the grounds are ruled that they didn't have grounds for doing this. And not just one person, because Howard Lazarus may have taken the action, but Christopher Taylor is the mayor of our city. The city council are the people, and I appreciate your being here, Jane, because I know that your counterpart isn't here. So I just want that question answered at some point.
You can be assured that that is a question we will ask. Somebody else had their hand up before, Sergeant? Oh, council member.
Councilmember Nelson. I
Nelson.
don't know about the appropriateness of this, but Jane, there was a detail that you skipped. There was because there's significant curiosity about this process. We did have a conversation with a city attorney on the Thursday following the suspension on the Friday, and we were told that the investigation, which we now understand the timing of the conclusion. We were told that the investigation was starting that afternoon, and so that was 6 days after the suspension had begun. And my question was, it really took us 6 days, and this sort of goes to another question that was asked about why a separate law firm. And it was explained to us that the delay was related to finding the right law firm and double and triple checking that there were not conflicts. And I personally share the same curiosity as everyone else about the process and the procedure that got us to where we are right now. So I just thought that was a relevant detail. And Jane, you were in that meeting, but I was sort of bursting in my chair like that. There's this more little bit that we know. That's the extent of what I have to contribute to this conversation.
How many
Well,
business
thank you.
days?
Well, yeah, you counted business days. So Friday afternoon it was announced, and then Thursday morning we were told that the investigation was started Thursday
I
afternoon.
was told it was that the investigator was retained last Friday
So
in a
Oh.
separate meeting. So,
Okay.
So you guys don't
in-
get the
in-
same
in-
information.
In my experience, 4, 5, 6 business days to find the law firm, vet it, run conflict checks, particularly for a place with this many conflicts. is not unheard of.
I'm not passing judgment
Yeah, no,
on
no,
any
I'm
of
just-
this.
I'm-
I'm saying that that's a conversation that I look forward to having, asking those questions and understanding what is standard, what's typical, what's the, yes, those are.
I was just trying to help with that piece.
Right, okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. Sergeant.
So, I want to add a few things just to public comment so that they're on the record. One, it was reported this afternoon that Councilmember Lum and Eaton are co-sponsoring something tonight to have Howard Lazarus be removed or separated by the city. So it's, I guess it's not a firing for cause, it's a separation agreement that would include paying a severance of almost $250,000 to Mr. Lazarus. The reason why I want that on the public record is just to frame some of the ways in which various sources will be contributing to this conversation and how any of us, ICPOC members or public, might actually interrogate the truthfulness or well-intentionedness of this information. So Councilmember Lum is one of the co-sponsors of this, but she's neglected to mention that tonight. And Lum and other council members have been actively fighting against oversight for years. I think it's important to consider the role of council broadly, the city attorney and Lazarus, all of them together in bringing someone like Commissioner Cox to Ann Arbor to fix a problem that almost all of them, I don't want to speak about individual incidents, but I have witnessed many public meetings about this issue of oversight over the last 3 years. Many of them are actively obstructing the process of any kind of oversight or transformation of this institution. So taking Councilmember Lum's word at how this is going, or that she's a good faith actor, I think would be ill-advised for any of us in this room. Given that she's actually working to remove the city administrator right now, which may or be a good or bad thing, but nonetheless, you have interests in this, deep interests in this, which are not actually revealing information in a timely manner to the public. The second thing I'd like to point out to people is that if you look at the history of oversight in Ann Arbor, the city officials have not been interested in having any kind of oversight. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. One is it's institutionally almost impossible. The contract the police officers have in Ann Arbor is incredibly strong, as is the contract for most police officers covered by strong unions across the country. Police unions receive extra protections. In Michigan, there's a state, there was a law passed in 1968 that allowed them to seek binding arbitration when they have union disputes, which means over time, police union contracts are vested with a lot of power because they can arbitrate these union bargaining decisions. There may be some ways in which the actual members of the force have better power and are better protected than Commissioner Cox, which should pose the question to all of us why he was brought here to do work that none of the city council members are actually interested in fighting for. The city attorney who helped write the revised ordinance that was not written by the public, the community task force, and Howard Lazarus, who I expect behind the scenes was working closely on all this, have all been actively working together, not to do this work of institutional change, which should magnify the kinds of questions we have about the ways in which an esteemed black man is brought from Boston at the end of his career to do work that most of the white officials in Ann Arbor have no interest in doing. So to put it off on Howard Lazarus at the last minute, although I would imagine he's deeply involved in this in all kinds of problematic ways, but I won't go on the record of saying what, it deflects the ways in which we should look at a lot of the people who have power in these institutions and the way over years since Ora Rosser's death, but long before, they have been maintaining the power structures in Ann Arbor that are harmful to people, including the way police are asked to do their job in this city. And if we lay the blame on the foot of one person tonight in some grand spectacle where Lum seems like she's now the champion of oversight, it would be a mistake and an erasure of the historical work that people in this community have been doing to bring real oversight in terms of policing and in governance in general. So anyway, that's a little background I think should go on the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Anyone else have a comment or a question? It doesn't have to be a question, it could be a comment. Please,
So,
yes.
So tonight, we're really not gonna still get any answer in terms of what is going on. I mean, we're just meeting to meet.
Yes.
I mean,
We're not meeting to meet. I think we have a little more insight in terms of the timing of what's going on with Chief Cox. I think one of the things that we wanted to do by meeting was show the city, by way of the city council, that there are many people who are invested in this process, and that there are many people who are probably not going to, who are not going to be silent and just accept what is happening because it's happening. And I think there have been conversations where it appeared that processes were going to happen and there wasn't much consideration of what people thought, particularly people of color in this community. And so I think by showing up, there is a degree to which we are doing more than meeting. I think that it is clear that we are not going to that we are not going to be bystanders in this process. And I know that there are often questions about what the Police Oversight Commission can do, but one of the things we can do is harness the power of our communities. And we can make it clear that we are going to ask people to be accountable, that we are going to ask tough questions, and that we expect those questions to be answered, and that there is a degree to which they ought to be answered, because we are not asking for ourselves, we're not asking for the Oversight Commission, we're asking for the residents of Ann Arbor and people who work and live here. So I hope you're not showing up just to show up.
Yeah, it's, in the past, our meetings haven't had this many people, and to see all of you here for this purpose is huge. That means a lot, because we are here for all of you and for the community. This change isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of scrapping and digging and people showing up in order to make the change happen. And this is just our first challenge. There's going to be more, and it's going to keep coming, and we're just going to have to keep showing up. And this is our first step. So kudos to all of you who did, and those of you that can bring others in the future. It's going to need to be a show for sure. People are going to need to know that there is a vested interest in this, and that's why Chair Jackson said, know where you vote, because that's going to mean a lot.
You want to
Yes.
add anything?
You mentioned a change is going to happen. What change are you referring to?
Just like Sergeant was referring to, there's lots of changes that need to occur, not just in this room, amongst this panel, in order for proper oversight to occur. We've attended conferences, we've heard from other oversight commissions around the country. It took years for them to create change and to get what they needed to do proper oversight. It doesn't happen overnight. We had the pleasure of meeting with them and talking to those leaders and saying, what is it that we need to do? And the first thing they all said is, you got a long battle ahead of you. So those are the things that are going to need to happen. That process of change, changing culture, changing rules, changing personas, changing relationships, building bridges, all of that's going to happen over time. And it's not going to happen with just a handful of people.
That also has to happen in the police department to some degree, right? Whether that means the hours that detectives work or other things, and I'm not privy to any of that. But the police chief has to be involved in those processes. And if we have a police chief who is involved in those processes, and he's not able to do the work that he was brought here to do and can be summarily dismissed, that's a problem. Now let me say, okay, thank you. And I want to be clear, I'm not like cheering for the police chief. I am as a police chief, but my job is oversight, is to be a critical thinker and to watch and evaluate carefully. But watching and evaluating this process is as big a case as we have had to handle, right? And obviously we're not finished yet. We're just in the beginning. We're going to be fighting for access to that report. We're going to be fighting for being able to have some accountability for what happened. We have seen police chiefs across the country be brought in and be dismissed because they don't fit in, if they appear to be changing the culture too much. I don't know that Chief Cox was doing that. I don't know how long, I don't know what changes he's made in the time that he's been here.
It's a short time.
It's been a short time, but I do know that this process could have been improved upon. I don't know if the chief will be retained or not, But I do know that his reputation, even if he is exonerated and a public apology made and people held to task, has been damaged.
That's right.
And that is problematic. And as an African American person, I understand what it's like. I'm sure many of you understand what it's like to be the only person in the room, to be the only black person in the room, or the first black person in the room, or the first black person to do whatever it is that you're doing. And that is challenging. And it's challenging when you have the support of the people who brought you in to do the job. I don't understand how difficult it could possibly be if it is very clear that you have no support. And I am pretty sure that's what the city showed the chief in this. I have no knowledge of what happened. I don't. But I do know that that it is not a good look for the city of Ann Arbor to have people coming and going. It doesn't speak well for us. It doesn't speak well for the processes, and it doesn't speak well if nobody can get a handle on this.
It sounds like, I mean, why him? It could have, if it's a lot of issues, why him? Now that really looks bad. He haven't been here long enough to really affect all of the changes that need to be. But why him? And then mum's the word. Nobody knows what's going on.
But so isn't that the point though? It feels like we don't know what happened. Maybe this is total. There's some possible outcomes here, right? There was misconduct, and there's consequences, right? That's a possible outcome. There was no misconduct, but a legitimate, a credible report that had to be investigated, and whatever was alleged, it was appropriate to take a timeout. If that happens, it doesn't seem like the process is broken. Where I think we get angry is if there's nothing here. Because then it feels like if he's been singled out it could be for any one of these reasons. But I just don't, what I hear is a lot of speculation, but we just don't know what happened. And until we do, I think we gotta be patient. There are some outcomes here that should be infuriating for this group in this community. But there are some possible outcomes that what happens is appropriate.
I think speculation gets weaponized, and that's part of the problem.
Right.
And so we are being patient. We're willing to wait. We understand the confidentiality of investigations, and that it's appropriate for them to be confidential. And were it anybody else being investigated, we want them to be confidential. However, the rampant speculation feels like
it does
weaponization. Council member Eaton.
My name is Jack Eaton. I serve on City Council. I represent the 4th Ward. The city charter sets up the appointment of a police chief as being our responsibility upon the recommendation of the city administrator. That establishes a special relationship between council and the police chief. Only city council can remove the police chief. I wish I could come to you and say that we have been informed of the nature of the charges and that we've been advised that we can't reveal what we know, but that we're satisfied that the process makes sense to us. But I can't. We haven't been told anything at all. I would contrast that with the University of Michigan, who just put their provost, I think the highest, the second highest ranking person in their administration, on administrative leave after taking the Board of Regents into a closed session to describe the charges against him.
Yeah.
We did not have the benefit of that. So I want to assure you that we believe we have a special relationship with this chief. He has been wonderful. I'm not going to prejudge him because I don't know anything, but I'm going to tell you that after this process is done, we're going to circle back around and we're going to take a look at how this was done to this chief. Because the speculation itself is harmful. Even if he's completely exonerated, even if we apologize to him, the harm is done just because nobody knows what the charges are or how serious they are, harms his reputation nationally. I find that unspeakable. It's so offensive. So I want to assure you that I came here to listen to you, that we really do hear what you're saying, and we are offended in the way that he's been treated, just the same way you are. I wish that I knew more, even though I wouldn't be able to tell you. I would at least be able
At least you would know
to try
what
to
you knew.
reassure you that it didn't look irregular, having looked at the facts. So we will circle back around after this process is done and make sure that this doesn't happen to this police chief again or to anybody of that rank in our organization again. So, I want you to know that he has really built a good relationship with council members, and that we would like to support him. If there's something horrible that he's charged with, you know, we're not going to overlook something, but we just don't know at this time. And so I can't tell you one way or another how this will turn out, other than we know that he's already been harmed by the behavior of the people who put him on administrative leave.
Well, can I ask you, so, I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that this is harming his reputation. I'm just wondering what you would do differently. Would you disclose the charges to the public? Or just, are you talking about just
If the
disclosing to
administration had
council?
disclosed the charges to the elected officials, we could tell our constituents that we're satisfied that there's enough substance there to justify putting
What's
him on
going on?
administrative leave.
Interesting. Yes.
Thanks so much for all you do. I really appreciate that this body has taken its mission seriously and that you're doing good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think they got a gentleman in the back had his hand up first, and then
What's a good one?
I'm sorry, I don't know everyone's names. Anyone's name.
Thank you, good evening.
Thank you. Good
Thank
evening.
you.
My name is Crosby Bean, Second Ward.
Welcome.
I'm here because I don't think we're gonna get the full scope and truth once the review is done. I have strong reservation about this whole thing. As the council person just said, there's no way that the council should not have been informed. I'm quite sure councilmen can take an oath of secrecy in working with the mayor and his chief, city administrator. There's no reason why the council should not have been informed. Because I have my concerns, quite frankly, that it's a lot deeper than most of us realize. I think, I believe the chief came in and started looking at things, and it rubs a lot of people, the powers to be in the city of Van Arbor, wrong. And that's why I don't think you're going to get a clear understanding of why he's actually leaving. If that's going to be the case. I think it's for the city to take this type of action without informing the council, city council. There's some things that's undermining that is not really going to come out. It's just not going to come out. And I think he started doing some things that very few people have just been let go, letting things ride along, and he started questioning. That's what I think. I know some people in Boston, very close, judges, and they spoke very highly of Chief Cox. I know some prosecutors in Boston. They spoke very highly. Now, I don't know whether this is something, the investigation is going back prior to his arrival here, or this is something that happened in the last 6 or 7 months that he's been here. But I think it's a lot more than what we are thinking about. I wouldn't even consider sexual harassment for the gentleman. I mean, this guy's been married for years, and most people who are, he speaks very highly of his family, his sons, who played football here at the University of Michigan. That was my least concern, that he would be sexual harassment. So I think this goes a lot deeper. I think it starts from the mayor down. That's what I believe. And there's just some things that I've been observing. I had one opportunity to meet with the chief, and very briefly. And he gave me great confidence that he actually wanted to do a good job here. And I know he did it in Boston based upon my references. But I met with him about 6 weeks ago. And I knew that I thought we was on a real good track to get some things done. I'm less confident now, regardless of what the report's going to come out, because I think we're looking at something a lot deeper than sexual harassment or even money. I just think we are. I think he steps on some toes. The powers to be here in the city of Ann Arbor and Washington County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to share some?
Just want to thank everyone for coming out to, this is very meaningful, and I apologize, I have another meeting upstairs right now, the council meeting, so, this is very meaningful, as our chair and co-chair have indicated, just to have you here and hear from you, and I have full faith in my colleagues, my ICPOC colleagues, that they will, they've been asking all the right questions about what led up to elevating this to placing Chief Cox on administrative leave, questions we all share and have been asking. And, excuse me. So, again, your input on the process and all the related concerns are critically important to all of us. And hopefully we will be able to, satisfy, answer, address your concerns when information is provided to all of us. And I just want to,
you're asking to put City Administrator Lazarus, you're working to suspend him tonight. It's given that he started this investigation against the chief.
That is, the separation agreement recommendation with the city administrator is not in the least related to the timing. Of course, is, curious, and coincidental, in not a good way. But but your question is understandable, and your takeaway and assumption that the two are related is understandable, but they are not. And this action was discussed with the administrator in various settings, and formally, most recently in an administrative committee meeting over a week ago, well in advance of our receiving an email from the city administrator letting us know that he was placing.
Are you going to answer the question?
I'm sorry?
She's asking, can you give us any information as to why you're asking for it?
Yeah, there's no one precipitating event, and we'll be discussing this later tonight.
So your answer is no. Okay.
Well, DC 8. The meeting's about to start,
but you could have talked about it at any point.
The two are not related, and we received the email communication from the city administrator telling us that Chief Cox, with no explanation, was being placed on administrative leave, and this followed these discussions with the city administrator about the proposed separation agreement.
Were you guys going to talk more about it at DC?
Yes,
When you get to DC?
sorry, but
okay.
I don't mean to, not answer.
Jane,
Yes.
I think one of the issues that is really very troubling over here is this communication with the administrator has been going on for a while. It's not just yesterday or
Correct.
4 weeks.
Correct.
And for this gentleman to cause this kind of havoc in the city.
Oh, I see, right.
So to me, it's like somebody who's leaving or about to leave, and then we're going to bring you guys down to your knees and try to deal with mess I'm leaving you behind. It's just, to me, as a citizen, as a member of this commission, is it's like give clemency to people because you are leaving.
Yeah, I understand.
And that is something that is going to show the faith. There's no people have no faith in the government of the city of Ann Arbor. Really, and to me, it's very. We think that this is a really great place to be in, and we discover that This government is no different than any other government anywhere in the States. It's just the same. They follow the same pattern. And that, to me, is questionable. The action is questionable. They had something related to personal matters. Must have been very serious for the administrator to appoint an outside firm to look into the allegations. Like, really, the man has been here for 7 months. He came in with all the vision that what he's going to do in the first month, second month, third month, 5 months, 10 months, and all these things. Everybody saw that. Why did they not object to his proposals? This is what he's going to do. They could have somehow tapered things. They could have changed things. They could have not agreed with some of the things that he was raising. But as members, I think it's just very troubling. And I'm troubled by it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Jane. Did you have a question for us?
Well, my
If you do.
Sure. My question was just to understand like what the decision is.
Your coat, Jane.
To have
We can bring it
outside.
up. We can bring that by.
Thanks.
Because you know we're doing that.
Thank you. Definitely want that. Thanks.
You will be watching.
Right.
We're sorry.
Your voice wasn't.
We're sorry.
Your voice wasn't enough. I'm sorry.
My question was somewhat of a follow-up, but just trying to understand, like in a decision to bring outside counsel, like if the person who is bringing accusations or is responsible for making a decision about next steps is also under some sort of decision-making path for a mutual separation agreement, like why would that not have outside counsel? And I don't know if that's something that could pass along, but it would seem important for that to be noted in some capacity, that decision-making process for the sake of transparency to understand who are the people who are leading our city that we're voting for. And I think in the absence of that information, that feels very disappointing as a voter here, and something that I would think for the next mayor would be important for them to address the concerns that have been raised tonight.
So I think if I understand correctly, it's more of how is this person who's been discussing severing ties able to like put together this investigation and go for it, basically, unilaterally.
Oversight or any.
Yeah,
It just
that's
seems
a good
quite messy
That is a good
to
question.
have that as
So
leading up.
it's within the scope of his duties to do that, and until he's discharged, those are his duties.
But somebody has to be able to oversee it.
people
Well,
have
wait,
to
wait,
be
wait,
skeptical.
so one at a time, right? So I think we don't know. I mean, maybe he's doing his job perfectly. We have no clue.
There
because,
isn't-
because we don't know what happened.
We don't trust you.
What-
So
what
you
trust-
need
what do you
to
mean trust me?
Stop telling us what the procedures are and that they're being followed properly, because we've been listening to the city tell us that for more than 20 years.
You don't know what happened. You're guessing.
We know
That's
that the
the whole
city.
problem.
Well, I know, but
I think, David, one of the
I'm sorry, but what I hear is everybody's rushing to judgment without knowing a single fact.
what you
hear that
hear,
at all.
what,
I
wait a
don't hear
minute,
that at
wait a
all.
minute, no. And what you hear is people who have watched processes go badly, people who have lost trust in government. You hear people who have been the victims of innuendo and weaponized rumors, not trusting the process. And so it is not unreasonable for people not to trust the process here. You have a privilege to be able to trust the process that everybody doesn't have. And that's all. So
Can
it's
I just
okay if you don't understand that. But a lot of people a lot of people really do feel that this process, it does not smell right. It doesn't taste right. It is slimy. It is, and so it is also reasonable that people feel that way. And so it is wonderful to trust the process. But many people aren't able to trust the process. They can't believe what you say because they see what you do.
Well, all right, so
Which is not me. That's James Baldwin. That's James Baldwin. That's not me. But what I'm saying, so it's fine if you trust it. We're not having a process where you yell at me.
Well, you're not going to impugn my character in a public forum.
I'm talking to you. It's a plural you, David, not you
Hold
personally.
up.
Nobody cares about you.
Sit down.
That's not what that's.
That's what they did to the chief. You can say about
So I think we can all agree that the process has been flawed,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so the process has to be reviewed. The process is not, and yes, we don't know if there could be something against the chief that is legitimate. There's that possibility, but there is undoubtedly the fact that city council that this looks fishy at 4:45 in the evening, that you on a Friday, that you announced that the chief is going on leave, that council was not told in any kind of way, and that though some of the process is okay, some of it smells fishy, and that's why
all
people are
smells to
upset.
me, but we don't know what happened. It may
Exactly.
All I'm saying is we have to be open to the possibility that it's legit, right? And I don't trust the process. I don't trust the government.
So what you hear
right?
people saying is, I think what I hear from most people, and what I'm hearing is the process is what they don't trust, and that we need to review it. This group needs to review what has happened, but not only this group, but the only thing that I've heard that's been very positive is the fact that city council, not just Howard Lazarus, city council will get a chance to see the report that's presented and make a decision.
Should see that report.
We should see that report too, and everybody here should hold responsible their city council person to make sure that they're reviewing this the right way. So people got a right to be angry. People have a right to be upset with the fact that the process, and there have been, I heard somebody earlier talk about the fact that all along the way there's been roadblocks put in place. This is my terminology. Roadblocks put in place for this group, right? They didn't really expect this group to have power, but I've spoken to a number of people on this who were commissioners here independently, and we effectively want to bring about some change, right? All of us in some ways. And we're going to fight and make sure that happens. That's not the way the charter was written, the way the task force originally wanted it. It's not the same, and we understand that. But we're going to take what we have and try to make something happen out of this. And this is one of those tests. So that's all I want to say.
You didn't finish your.
I just want to leave it at, like, I think on one hand we can hold that, like, we don't know all the answers, but we can also rigorously investigate all that has been presented and say that that sounds fishy. So I'm not, like, assuming that anyone has done anything bad, but I want to say that, like, all the context and the circumstances and the lack of transparency, like, suggests to me that even when we do find out the information, the whole process has been muddied. And that is how I lose faith. But I'm not saying I don't understand procedure and privacy and process. I'm just saying I'm going to rigorously investigate the situation.
Well, I think
as
that's what our goal
student
is.
of American history, like, I can't
I have
say that.
a visceral reaction as someone who sues the government, who chases justice, to prejudging anyone before we have something to judge them on. So I don't trust the process too much. I don't trust I sue the government, but I don't like us saying Howard Lazarus did something wrong. He may have done something very right. Or he may have really done something wrong, and we need to hold him to task for that. But we don't know yet.
Right.
But city council's working to remove him tonight, so it's a good question to be asked.
It
What,
is.
why they
Oh,
think
no.
he's done. He's about to get possibly a $250,000 severance with no effective oversight of his work, and the police chief is undergoing a review. So it makes sense. It makes sense.
So 1, and I saw number 2, and number 3 in the back of the glasses, and number 4 green plaid glasses, and then Lori Saginaw 5. I'm sorry, I don't know. Will you say, if you feel comfortable, will you say your names?
Kirsten Mobo, I am a citizen of Ann Arbor, and I'm extremely disconcerted. I feel like I'm trying to get up to speed really fast here. My challenge, and this isn't personal because I don't know you. My challenge to your statement is that the process is wrong. Whatever, it is wrong. There is no situation where a person should be able to take this kind of move and not tell anyone. The same person who has apparently sidelined the police commissioner is the same person who has chosen the outside investigators. That's a conflict right there. right there. And what becomes impossible to trust is when information does come out, I don't have any trust with this being the setup that I'm getting the full information. There's no way I can know. When one person is holding it and saying, okay, now, here's what you need to know. I have no way of knowing because nobody else is reviewing that person. So I have a question, because I know this is this is a new process, a new group. In your experience so far, do you get answers?
We get some answers. And
You
probably
get
depends
what
on the
they
questions.
want to get. Yeah.
And sometimes we get some answers to questions that
you
they
didn't ask.
don't want us to know.
Yeah.
I think we found out quite a few things that we weren't supposed to know.
But it's not an open book.
This city is not an open book.
This whole building is not an open
So
not an
what?
open
So
building,
then my
it's
last
not open
question, I
book.
guess, and I'll
Yeah.
is, as a citizen, who cares, and who is very disconcerted that the 3 white council members made their statements and left.
Well, because council is meeting now.
I get that.
Okay.
But that's who council is. And they made their statements and they left. What can I, as a citizen, functionally do to support you?
I think you're doing
'Cause
part
this
of it.
has to happen.
Because part of what happens is despite Howard Lazarus works for city council. They don't work for him, and sometimes it seems
So
like
how
they
can
work
he get
for him.
away with saying, you guys don't get to know yet?
I think that is a great question for council, and it's a question that we have
That's
for
what I
them.
wanted to ask
And-
Jane.
Well, the question is, who works for whom?
Exactly. So why isn't
And so
council
that's-
all up in arms? You can't do this. You
Well,
can't
they
do
are-
this.
They are, but Stephen Postman is likely the person who said that. Just to be clear, that's legal advice.
But legal advice is not in charge of the city. They're a
Well,
counselor.
So you're right. So Howard chose to follow the advice of his lawyer. That's likely what happened in this instance.
One of the questions is, for whom does the city attorney work? Does he
That's-
work for Howard Lazarus? Does he work for city council when they're at odds?
Right.
Who is the client?
I mean, you can't say the city attorney
So there are
isn't
a
top
number
of
of
the,
questions.
top of the
So there are a
mountain.
number of questions like that that are unclear. And you can help by doing 2 of the things you already do. And 1 is voting and being clear that you're gonna, and 2 is showing up for us. Because when it is clear that we can have the power of the people, then that does force some entities to have conversations with us that they don't feel like having because they're concerned about your vote. And so it is extraordinarily meaningful that you all are here, that you all came out for this process, because it helps city council understand that they do have to answer our questions. They do have to be
They have to
accountable
represent
because
everybody.
we do not have an agenda other than to get our questions answered because we represent the people. And that is our agenda, to think about transparency and to think about police policy and police procedure and how that can better benefit the citizens and the people who live and work in Ann Arbor. That's our agenda, and that's the only agenda we have. We're not going to be
appreciate that.
elected. I may or may not be appointed again this year, but I'm not going to change my behavior. So I'm going to ask those hard questions whether they reappoint me or not. I am going to push, and I'm going to be annoying, and I'm going to be problematic, and people are going to yell at me, and I yell sometimes.
Transparency can't be just
because
what
it
they
is-
want to give us.
Right, and it's not,
Right.
and it's not a process that anybody's used to. So nobody likes that, and it's annoying. It looked good for you guys, you know. They want to tell you, oh, we've got oversight now,
Yeah.
and then they don't want us to do anything, whomever
why
that
I'm
may be.
asking,
But
do
we
you
are
get
doing
answers?
things. So that is a process. I'm sorry, sir.
I think you can hear me from there. And as I think we all, many of us understand, the commission certainly did not have the blessing of the administration for people we elect. We live out of town, we're in the township, but it's well known, pretty pervasive, well known. The commission did not have the support of the powers, we'll leave it there, the administrator and the others. I'm wondering about, well, also, and not unrelated to that, it seems to me that this body, your body, Ms. Jack, should have taken place, should have met with the administrator I mean, what we're doing now should be after the fact, not where are we going? Nobody knows. And also, I'm wondering from your perspective, what level of transparency do you think will come out of this?
I don't know. We want to see the report. We want to see the investigation.
Unredacted.
Unredacted. No, we don't want the city attorney's office to redact it. We want to be able to see that. There has been some suggestion from some city council people that they agree that we should be able to see that. I don't know if they will voluntarily let us see that, or if citizens will have to demand that we be able to see it. But it is certainly something that we're going to push for. We got the email at the same time as council, 4:45 on Friday, and then we let the rest of the commission know. So the commission had no idea. They just decided to CC us, one of us at the wrong email address, at 4:45 on Friday. And on Monday morning, we were in Howard Lazarus's office asking uncomfortable, unpleasant questions. And he was pretty uncooperative as well. But we asked a lot of questions anyway. And we were able to discern some things, not as much as we'd like. I think we asked some things that were unexpected, and he gave us some answers he probably didn't mean to say. He said some things he probably didn't mean to say. And sometimes that happens. So I don't know how transparent this process is going to be, but we want it to be crystal clear, and that is what we're going to push for. We may need your help in that, but we are certainly going to do that that is our intent. Was Jason next? I think so. Commissioner.
Hi, my name is Jason Morgan. I serve as chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners. I'm also an Ann Arbor resident. I represent a third of the city of Ann Arbor on the county commission. Our vice chair, Ricky Jefferson, is here, and appreciate Ricky being here. We don't really like to involve ourselves in city business, given that we're a separate unit of government. But particularly as an Ann Arbor resident, and as a county government that is trying to work close with the city of Ann Arbor around racial equity and a number of other initiatives, we just wanted to be here to express our concern. I know there are a number of members of the faith community here. Charmaine, I think, has been helpful in terms of getting the word out, but just to express our shared concern with everybody else who's here. As somebody who, as chair of the board, I hear a lot of things in our county government that I know the administration often does not want to share out publicly, but I do think something of this high level and of this gravity, particularly around I just think there's so many unanswered questions around the process. I think that there is grave concern, and we want to share that concern with you all and just express that to this body, that we share the concern. So, thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank
both.
you.
Thank you both for coming. Mr. Satterwhite, and then.
Thank you. My name is Rod Satterwhite. I live in Pittsfield Township. My name is Rod Satterwhite. I live in Pittsfield Township, so right next to Ann Arbor, but work in Ann Arbor, live here sometimes. I feel like one of the one word that has been kind of floating through all of the conversations today but has not been spoken is dialogue, and I feel like that's what kind of underpins both the importance of this committee and also the difficulties that we have with the process that has taken place as it's taken place. The reason that this committee can function is because it serves as a loudspeaker for the community to voice its concerns, such that they can provide effective oversight of the police, such that our city police reflect the actual policing desires of the community. And so it's incredibly important that people continue to show up, to say their problems, etc. But I feel like in this process too, because dialogue has not effectively happened between the city manager and city council, such that city council can then report out to the people, such that the people's valid concerns that this process was not appropriate, or I guess carried out appropriately, it was maybe okay or more okay than people thought it was. That has undermined this. And then the city manager's lack of transparency with the Oversight Commission, such that they could then say that to us in this setting. And so it is incredibly important that people continue to show up to these things so that we can continue to show how important this is to the city as a body.
Thank you. Ms. Saginaw.
I'm Lori Saginaw, and Janet Haynes and I were on the task force that I guess we gave birth to you in a way.
You did.
I'm so proud. And what I wanted to say tonight is that we have been given an opportunity to really know what transparency is not and what accountability is not. And those were the two primary reasons that an oversight commission was believed to be needed in this community in order to build trust that does not exist. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am that all of you do what you are doing, and many times I have been the only person from the community sitting during your meetings. In contrast to tonight, when you can know that this community cares that you exist, wants you to exist, and is going to be part of your work. So talk about outreach, DeAndre. Here it is. And it is not an accident that what draws us here tonight is a racialized issue. And that you have provided us with a forum where we don't have to sign up, where we don't have to be restricted to 3 minutes, where we can have exchange with you, is so civilized in my mind and such a gift. So I want to appreciate that. I want to appreciate everyone who came, and I want to look forward to what we're all going to do together. Because now we know what we cannot tolerate any longer. And we also know that this community is active and concerned and willing to work together. When we held the task force meetings, we talked about race and racism in this community for one of the first times in many years in the context of city government. And we are going to continue to do that. So this is not isolated to Ann Arbor. It involves the whole county. It involves the whole state. It involves the whole nation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I am Ricky Jefferson. I'm also here with my chair and friend, Jason Morgan. Thank you, Jason. I'm also a member of the Ministers Alliance of Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor, and vicinity. Pastor Farrell, Reverend Shaw are here. We stand here for Pastor Gordon, who is a member of Ann Arbor City. He couldn't be here for certain things, and also Reverend Roger Green, and also Reverend Evans over at Second Baptist. Just wanted to let you know that. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And just wanted to let you know that we got your email, and we came because we're concerned that if it happens in one place in Washtenaw County, it can happen in another. So anytime you need the services of the Ministers Alliance, please reach out, because that's what we're here for, to try and be a part of the community so that we can make a difference in the lives of everyone that's here, whether you are of any ethnic race or any gender or any sexual orientation. We believe in not, let's say, not allowing discrimination to be a part of our lives that has a effect on our citizens, on our residents, when it comes to housing, when it comes to policing, when it comes to every day getting up in the morning. Who you are will depend upon where you end up at night if you run into police officers. So we want to make sure that our voice is heard at the Ministers Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Martha, and I live on Broadview Lane, so I'll have to look up my ward number because I never remember it. But I work with students to help them understand social identities, their own and those of other people, and how they impact and interact with each other. And one of the things that I try and help them learn about is leadership defined as collaboration across difference. And it's really, really, really disappointing to be living in a city where I don't see collaboration happening between city administrator and the city council, and them collaborating with you all who's supposed to do oversight. So another thing that I try and help students understand is particularly when there are social identity harms, like the racial things that are going on, that they have to work to repair harm. And so I know that folks have talked about apologies at the time that they're right or whatever, things like that. But it makes me think of some other things that I would also ask that the harm in some other places be thought about. Yes, to the city reputation. Also to anybody, a citizen, but I also, because I work with students, people that are younger than me, harm has been done that they don't have an example of good leaders doing leadership of collaboration across difference. So what is going to be processed and what are things going to be put in place so that that's better and so that the continuing repetition of these kinds of harms doesn't happen over and over and over again? And I really appreciate, I had never met the man who identified himself as Jason from the county. I really appreciate that he said how the governments need to be able to work together, because one of the things that I'm thinking about why we have to have the police functioning well here is we're having a presidential debate come to this city in only a very few months. And so I need to be able to know that my police department is going to be able and is going to be thought of and trusted and seen by other law enforcement officials as collaborative across differences, because there are going to be many kinds of social identity differences in this town, because lots of people are going to descend here besides those of us who already live here. So that's going to have to be with the county, the state, and the federal folks. So I just made those notes as I listened. So I ask that you help with those repairing harms and help with those things, keeping us all safe as the next demands are made on our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or thoughts?
Shall we all move upstairs?
Exactly. I just want to ask a question. So I think 2 meetings prior, I asked if the ICPOC could request some data from the police department, specifically the data that was used or given to Dolan Consulting Group to produce a report about racial bias in traffic stops in Ann Arbor. And I brought some concerns to ICPOC in part because the Dolan Consulting Group contracted with a criminologist who is the leading proponent of there is no racial bias in traffic stops. And he sells this methodology to cities across the country, and then he's on Fox News and other right-wing media. So I'd like to know if the public can get the data set. I'd like to just reiterate that request. And again, this might hypothetically be related to some of the difficulties in the police department, which is effectively, inside or outside, there is no oversight of their work yet. And it'd be interesting to know what is happening. Let's just start with traffic stops. But anyway, I'd just like to reiterate that request. And I'd be happy to have, for the public, the data set they gave to that consulting group. So that wouldn't take any other work. They could just anonymize it, give us a CSV file, and we'll be good to go. Thank you.
You never got it.
Yeah, it's not that we haven't asked.
No, I totally.
Okay. We actually have a group of college student statisticians from the School of Information who are like chomping at the bit to do some data analysis, and I enjoy that myself, from time to time. And we don't have that data yet.
Have you asked for it?
I've asked you all twice.
What, have you?
Like.
So I didn't become aware of that report until actually accidentally about 6 months ago after you all had started. It was published in 2017, but the city didn't share it with anyone. It wasn't published on any news, like it wasn't reported on it. So it's on a city website. I found it accidentally.
Yeah, we found it too.
Yeah, so I would have asked earlier if I'd known it existed, but I have a feeling that they thought not to share it because, so I could ask other people, but I thought it was a good idea to test the process, not to put you all in a sticky situation.
No, it's not sticky for us to ask for more things. It's not a problem. I think we ask for data on things all the time. Traffic stops.
Trespass. I want that too, yes, please.
Yeah, we ask for lots of data. I think part of the problem is getting the data together, but sometimes it's turning it over. I think one of the requests, it seems funny to say it now, but from the chief to city council was a person to, manage their data. I don't know where that request is now. That actually was a request. He came to council with a request for several.
Just a point of information, when the oversight meetings were happening, the acting chief said that they had a database. It's some sort of police proprietary software that is built for police departments. It was the acting chief at the time. Yes, but prior. So it was Fanis.
Oh, it was Fanis.
Yeah, Fanis. Sorry. My apologies. But he said that they could query that database. And so when asked in public meetings, both Administrator Lazarus and the acting police chief both said getting data would not be an issue. They had databases that they could query to get information.
Can we do that? Can you query? Like that?
Things, yes, they're in databases.
Yeah, we know there are things in databases, but can they be taken out, anonymized for analysis? So can you do that?
Generally speaking, absolutely yes.
So if they don't have the data, so if they don't have the data set available that they gave to the Dolan Consulting Group, it does pose two important questions. One, it's possible that they shared non-anonymized or not clean data with a third party, former police, all-white group who are using a very problematic racial pseudoscience, whatever, criminologist. They gave that data to someone else. If it's now not clean enough to give to the public in Ann Arbor, it raises questions about what data was shared with a third party. And if they don't have it anymore, it doesn't make any sense. When you query a database and you construct a data set, it should be replicable. That's how actual social science research works. So if you couldn't replicate the data set you gave to him, well, then that's a whole other set of questions.
And if
It
you
just
can't
doesn't make
replicate the
sense.
analysis from that data set,
Right.
it's a problem. That's what we do. Do you know where this data are? These data are?
I can track it down.
Thank
All right.
you.
We'll email you. We'll follow up. Like right now, I'll be emailing. Don't forget. Data set, right. I'm sorry. Any other questions, comments, or thoughts? Whew. I know that some of you are interested in seeing public comments upstairs as related to the chief as well. We can.
Do we need to do our approval of any minutes or anything?
We can
Or what should we do?
You can do, yeah. Yeah.
We can postpone all that?
So we can,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Sam, were you about to ask a question?
I was just getting the spelling review.
Okay.
I thought.
So,
And I was like.
is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
I was trying to.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mohammed, would you like to adjourn? Say aye to you.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, we are adjourned. All right.
Thank you.
I know you guys want to go.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, community.
Yes, thank you.